was a huge hit for HBO, and it is now up at the Emmys for 5, including Best Drama, and for the directing for the pilot episode. And we have with us Adam McKay, the director of the pilot episode, the Oscar-winning director. I have to ask, Adam, is Logan looking like he'll be even more sadistic with his family in season 2?
Logan is a master of all the games, so he goes in and out of slowly being sadistic, and then he puts enough love in there that the children are interested, and he kind of lures them in. It's a perfect cat and mouse game that he's just a master of playing. It all revolves around power. So yeah, he's got some this new season. The writing staff did a great job of finding new wrinkles.
How did you come across this series, and what drew you to the material for this show? Because it's very intricately done.
Armstrong, as a writer, a while before he wrote this pilot, he had written a project for us about Lee Atwater that we developed over at Paramount. He had a script at HBO about 2 young men that go to and that was really good, that he had developed with Frank Rich, attached to that for a bit. And just the base level, the way I met him, I'm just a giant fan of his writing, In the Loop and Peep Show are shows that a movie and a show that I love. Jesse also wrote on Four Lions, which was one of my all-time favorite movies. And then on top of it all, he's a lovely guy. I mean, just a really funny, great guy. So yeah, we hit it off with him about, 8-9 years ago. And Kevin Messick, our producer from our company, heard that he was doing this script in this series. And right away came to me and was like, oh my God, this sounds like something you would love. And so we sort of preemptively went to Jesse and was just told him we're very interested in this. And the first draft I read, which, it's the first draft, so a little rough, was already spectacular to direct the pilot, and we attached as producers. So it's one of those cases where you forge a friendship with someone you really admire, and it ends up turning into a project that you love.
So obviously this show is loosely based on the Murdoch family and their media empire, and I was wondering if there was any aspect of their life or business that you were eager to explore with these characters.
Yeah, I mean, it's Jesse had written a script a long time ago, like 12 years ago or something, dealing with the Murdochs that I had read. It was really good. But I think the breakthrough moment that he had for Succession was not to have it just be about the Murdochs, to draw from all these wealthy families, to look at all their dramas, to look at the Maxwells, to look at the Redstones, the Waltons. There's so many of these wealthy families out there that have an outsized influence on how we live. And it felt like the second he opened that door, the whole show, just the whole concept had a giant gust of wind come through it and came to life in a different way. That having been said, there's no question the Murdochs are part of the inspiration for it. And, you could track them and what's going on with them in the papers. Now we have Rupert and Lachlan basically are running Fox. James has kind of gone and started his own VC company. And so there seems to be some divisions there. And there's always the stories about the daughter is really sharp, but for some reason she doesn't get in. And then Rupert's always remarrying, which kind of reshuffles the deck every time. And, he's clearly a guy who enjoys power in a large way and also enjoys blending power with family relationships. So yeah, they're definitely an inspiration, but yeah, there's plenty of other families in there as well.
One of the other things that this show has done so well, and I've asked a lot of the actors about this, is its blending of the dramatic and the comedic and the absurd all together. Do you find the dramatic or the comedic aspects of the show more compelling to you personally?
Well, one of the things I initially loved about this script was that clearly the world we're living in is changing in pretty giant ways, regardless of your political belief or your feelings or which side of the spectrum you're on. And, we're in a giant period of change worldwide. Democracy's being questioned. You're seeing more totalitarian leaders come in, the extremist and more profit driven in a lot of cases, not in all cases, but so I really felt like with this show, and obviously Jesse agreed, that there was something we could do with the tone that would be different. And I think one of the breakthrough moments was when we started looking at movies that were more dramatic, like Foxcatcher, and movies that had this kind of deep, rich bottom to it, like The Insider, and thinking, could you do comedy with that look and that feel and that sort of gravitas? Can comedy exist in that? Another filmmaker who inspired us, the early works of Neil LaBute, In the Company of Men, Friends and Neighbors, that darkness mixed with that weight. It's a tricky thing to pull off, and we knew it would be hard, but we felt like with what's going on in the world, we had to give it a go.
So I did ask about Logan specifically with season 2, but and I know the premiere is this Sunday, but I'm just too eager. What else can we expect from season 2?
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, the cast, as you know, is just every actor is A++. So this season, all the children are going to go through, their own dysfunctional, strange, painful journeys. And because of that, you just get to see these incredible performances. So one thing I can tell you for this second season is that Jeremy Strong just has so many moments in this second season where you're like, oh my God, that are heart-wrenching and dark and character splitting. And I'm watching Rough Cuts, and I've already seen 7 or 8 moments with him where I'm like, this might be some of the best acting I've ever seen. Sarah Snook, too, really rises up in this second season. Her character, Shiv, look for her to make a move. I won't say much more than that. And then Connor, the oldest son, he makes his own kind of quirky, strange grab for power, which I'm not going to say any more than that, but you'll see. And it's pretty fantastic. And then in the middle of it always is Roman, Kieran Culkin, who's sort of, slithering through everyone else's machinations, trying to find his own place, but utterly ill-equipped to do combat with the other children. And so obviously wounded and pain throughout it all, but yet at the same time hilarious in how amoral he is. So yeah, I think you're going to see there's definitely things everyone goes through. And then, my favorite pairing is Tom and Cousin Greg. And there's a lot of really fun stuff that happens with them. Cousin Greg's obviously the most naive character, but you're going to see him start to actually learn a few things kind of in this season.
I'm curious, actually, specifically like with the Kieran Culkin character, because he's so outlandish, hilariously outlandish. Is any of that improvised, or is that all in the script?
Very funny with Kieran. When I started working with him on the pilot, he was the one actor who came to me and said, "No improv. I won't do improv." And I said, "Well, we'll see about that." "Yes, you will. You'll be really good at it." No, I mean it. No improv. And whenever anyone tells me that, I always know they're going to end up being one of the best improvisers. So yes, Kieran is an incredibly gifted improviser, not in any way to downplay the tremendous writing that's behind that character. But you could tell it in his performance that he's just always, playing around the dialogue. And to Jesse's credit, he gives him the freedom to mess around with lines, mess around with moments. Honestly, a lot of the cast is very improvisational. Cousin Greg, Nick Braun, very improvisational. Matthew McFadden, very improvisational. They're always finding moments in these scenes, and they all know each other so well that you can feel it. There's an improvisational life running through the show mixed with this really great writing.
I also have to ask about the name just slipped me. The name of the oldest child. What's his
Connor.
name again? Connor. Yes. His his moments are absolutely insane. Like, is there like one moment that he had in the first season? I know you can't give anything away about the second season, but was there one moment that he had in the first season that just made you just filled with joy just reading it?
I mean, there's so many with Connor. Alan Ruck is so good. I loved when they went to the bachelor party for Tom, and they're in that sleazy nightclub, and there's people just having random sex everywhere. And Connor gets in trouble for telling too many women that he loves them. And like the woman in charge of the club has to come up to him and say, "Will you please stop telling all the women that you..." And then, 3 minutes later, you catch him telling another woman that he loves them. That just kills me. That's like perfect Connor. And like I said, in this second season, we go even deeper on Connor and start really taking it towards an interesting yet sadly very plausible place when you see what happens with him. He kills me in every scene. I love how he's always a step slower than everyone else. And yet he fashions himself sort of a Henry David Thoreau, down in New Mexico. Like, he's got this ranch and he thinks he's connected to nature. There's so many details about him. I love, like, when they went down to the ranch in season 1 and you hear in the local bar that Connor took his dog into the bar and offered someone $1,000 to put his dog down because he couldn't do it. And that's just such a move. It's like both kind of sweet and also deranged. Which is a great just overall description of him.
So, just to jettison to your the overall arc of your work in general, I mean, you were primarily known for doing very like laugh out loud, audience pleasing comedies, but you've definitely gone into more political, socially relevant material with The Big Short and Vice and this as well. Is there something that led to you making that sort of pivot? I mean, you're still doing comedy, but was there something that led to you making that pivot, that you wanted to do material that was more in that wheelhouse?
I think comedy is always based on the times that you live that you live in, rather. And there was clearly a change going on in the past 10 years. I mean, you look at the types of comedies that are put out in movie theaters, you look at what's being made. It's just very different than when we started back in the early 2000s, or even when I started at SNL back in the 90s. It's a completely different tone and timbre. In fact, if anything, I think the comedy world's a little confused right now. It doesn't quite know what to do with itself because we're dealing with such large, just cartoonish, insane figures and dynamics. So I think there was just an adjustment to that. I think to keep doing movies like Anchorman and Step Brothers, even though I love them and had an amazing time making them, like, it was time for a change. I mean, we still laughed a ton on The Big Short, even though it's also a tragic story. We laughed a lot on Succession, even Vice, which was definitely the darkest of all the things I've done. There was still some very funny moments in it. So I think we're kind of looking around, trying to understand like what the topography of drama, comedy. I mean, the one real genre you're seeing flourish like crazy, and it's very telling, is horror. Horror is just, there's some amazing movies being made in horror. And I always feel like whenever it's horror, you always know it's about the subconscious. You always know it's about deeper stuff. It's about metaphor. And for, sort of in the same way, like the Twilight Zone really was perfect for the early 60s when America started to change. I think you're starting to see that happen now. So yeah, I guess long story short, I mean, that was a long-winded answer. I guess the really quick answer would be I just try and make stuff that I would want to see. And it's just gone.
So to wrap this all up, so congratulations again on your Emmy nomination for directing, but you're also nominated 4 other times as a producer for various things, including I Love You, America with Sarah Silverman and Drunk History. What was it like? What was your reaction when you found out that you got nominated for directing?
I, of course, was thrilled, mostly because I just love Succession. And I was especially thrilled when the show itself got nominated. Yeah, it's always nice, people recognizing we took some risks on that show. I mean, we were doing a show where, a lot of people are like, they're not likable, and this kind of likable note that you always hear, which I personally don't care about. I think some of the most interesting characters are damaged and flawed and sometimes nasty, but we knew it was going to be a little bit of a rough rock to push up the hill. So it's always heartening to see the audience kind of end up feeling what you were feeling with the show. So in that sense, it was definitely exciting, and it was also flattering. And yeah, it's cool to see these other shows. I mean, Drunk History's just completed its 6th season, and I love seeing that show get acknowledged. It's one of the more unusual, original shows out there. Owen Berg from our old Gary Sanchez is our lead producer on it. He's done great work. And I Love You, America with Sarah Silverman. I love that show. And such a shame it's not on anymore. I really feel like that was a show that was kind of going for a new kind of voice about how we talk about our country and politics and stuff. So once again, a show that didn't get picked up, but at the same time gets acknowledged for awards. So kind of exciting.
Well, thank you so much, Adam, for joining us. And to all of our viewers, make sure you go to goldderby.com and make your predictions for this year's Emmys to see who will take home the gold, and who, if you can be our smartest prognosticators in Hollywood. Again, thanks so much, Adam.
My pleasure. And I just noticed I picked the least flattering angle to film myself I possibly could. Don't anyone out there ever choose this angle.